Welcome to the deep dive. We are going way beyond just the founding father image today and
Yeah.
really trying to get to know Benjamin Franklin,
Right.
the man.
Sounds good.
I have a feeling you're going to love this one. Your sources are just jam-packed with
Yeah.
stories and insights that I think really paint a vivid picture of his personality,
Uh-huh.
his passions, and honestly, just his really unique way of approaching the world.
It's true. There's so much more to him
Yeah.
than just, the
Yeah.
kite and the lightning rod.
Right.
He was really complex, fascinating figure
Mm.
who just left his mark on everything, science,
Yeah.
politics, society.
Okay, so let's unpack this. One of the first things that jumped out at me
Okay.
was the story of young Franklin shipwrecked on the Isle of Wight after that difficult first trip to London.
Oh, wow.
And what does he do? He ends up leading his companions on this nighttime adventure, wading through mud just to get back to a tavern. I mean, the guy was barely 20 years old at the time.
That really sets the stage, doesn't it?
Mm.
You can already see that spark
Mm-hmm.
of resourcefulness and that adventure
Yeah.
that would really define so much of his life.
And maybe a little bit of mischief too, right?
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if that resonates with you at all. Do you see yourself as someone who likes to shake things up a bit?
Perhaps. But what's really interesting is how that adventurous spirit was really fueled by a deep, lifelong curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
The sources you provided highlight his fascination with water. And I know you're someone who's always been drawn to natural phenomena.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. He wasn't just observing the water either. He was conducting experiments with oil and its effects on waves, even on cramped ships.
Wow.
It's like his mind was always working, always searching for explanations.
He wasn't satisfied with just seeing things. He wanted to understand the why behind them.
Right.
And his approach to discovery was revolutionary. He said, "A new appearance, if it cannot be explained by our old principles, may afford us new ones."
Hmm.
It's like he's giving us permission to question everything and be open to new ways of thinking.
It's almost like he's encouraging us to have those aha moments, just like you're hoping to do with this deep dive.
Exactly. Now, of course, we can't talk about Franklin without mentioning his work with electricity.
Right.
But it's important to remember that at that time,
Mm-hmm.
most people knew absolutely nothing about electricity.
Yeah.
It was a complete mystery.
Yeah, think about that for a second. No smartphones, no lights, no understanding of this fundamental force of nature. It must have seemed almost magical.
And Franklin's experiments were truly groundbreaking. He figured out
Yeah.
that there were positive and negative charges.
Yeah.
He even invented those terms. He discovered conductors and non-conductors. And then there's that iconic lightning rod experiment, proving that lightning was essentially a giant electric spark.
And what's really cool is that his fame wasn't just about the science itself. It was about the practical application.
Right.
He figured out how to use this knowledge to make people's lives better.
Uh-huh.
Does that resonate with you? That desire to make knowledge useful?
Absolutely. But here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Franklin's religious views are often overlooked. Growing up in Boston, he was surrounded by strong, often conflicting religious opinions.
It must have been a bit of a melting pot of beliefs. Yeah.
It was. And this led him to develop a very pragmatic view of faith.
Okay.
He prioritized morality and virtue above specific doctrines.
Uh-huh.
He believed in being a good person, regardless of your religious affiliation.
The sources even mentioned that he defended a minister who was accused of heresy
Wow.
for not emphasizing conversion. I mean, wouldn't you expect that from that era?
It's a fascinating glimpse into his open-mindedness
Oh.
and his willingness to challenge conventional thinking,
Yeah.
even in matters of faith.
So we have this curious, adventurous, scientifically minded individual who also has this incredibly pragmatic approach to faith. But what about his views on science and public service?
Well, that's where we see a stark contrast
Right.
with someone like Thomas Jefferson.
Okay.
Jefferson believed that public service
Yeah.
actually distracted from scientific pursuits.
Really? That's surprising considering he ended up being president.
It is, but remember, Jefferson wrote that during the Revolution,
Okay.
while Franklin was emphasizing the importance of science as public service.
Yeah.
During peacetime,
Okay, so there's this distinction between wartime and peacetime. It almost seems like their views were flipped.
and that suggests that Franklin saw science
Yeah.
as something that could directly benefit people, something that could improve their lives.
Yeah.
It aligns perfectly with that practical nature
Uh-huh.
we were talking about earlier.
This is already so much more than just a dry history lesson, isn't it? We're getting a glimpse into the mind of a man who is constantly learning, adapting, and finding new ways to apply his knowledge to make the world a better place.
And this is just the beginning. Next, we're going to dive into Franklin's incredible social skills
Okay.
and how he used them to create a community of like-minded individuals.
All right. So we've got this picture of Franklin as a scientist, an inventor,
Oh.
and a bit of a free thinker when it comes to religion, but he was also an incredible community builder. Tell me about this Junto club he started.
Okay.
It seems right up your alley.
The Junto is a fascinating example
Yeah.
of Franklin's, social genius.
Okay.
He brought together this really diverse group of young men, artisans, tradesmen, thinkers, and they met regularly. Not just to, discuss serious topics,
Yeah.
but to genuinely support each other and build lasting friendships.
And this wasn't just a short-lived experiment either. This club lasted for 40 years.
Right.
That's incredible. What was the secret to their success?
Well, Franklin had this knack for fostering meaningful connections.
Oh.
He even established rules for pleasant conversation, encouraging members to focus on finding truth rather than, winning arguments. I think that's something we could all learn from, especially in today's world where
Yeah.
it feels like everyone's just shouting their opinions
Yeah.
without really listening.
I'm seeing a pattern here. Curiosity. Pragmatism. And now this focus on respectful dialogue. Do you think these qualities were key to his effectiveness as a leader later in life?
Absolutely. And those skills were put to the test during the French and Indian War.
Okay.
Remember, Philadelphia was dominated by Quaker pacifism
Yeah.
at the time.
Right.
But when the city needed defense, Franklin stepped up
Yeah.
and took charge of organizing the militia.
Wait, so the guy who preached respectful dialogue and finding common ground is now leading a military effort.
Right.
That's quite a shift.
It is, and it shows how adaptable he was. What's remarkable is how he went about it. He focused on electing officers, building consensus, and empowering citizens. It's like he was laying the groundwork for the democratic ideals that would later define America.
There's a story about a British officer who visited Philadelphia and praised the organization of the militia, completely unaware that the mastermind behind it all was Franklin, standing right there.
Oh, wow.
It's almost too perfect.
It speaks to his ability to operate both behind the scenes and in the spotlight. He was comfortable in both roles.
Okay, so now we have Franklin, the community builder. Franklin, the pragmatic military leader. But how did he navigate the complexities of a rapidly changing America? I'm thinking specifically about that wave of German immigration
Yeah,
that was happening at the time.
that's a great point. Franklin initially expressed worries
Okay.
about Pennsylvania becoming a German colony. He even wrote a satirical piece suggesting that they ship rattlesnakes to England
Oh.
in exchange for all the convicts being sent to the colonies.
Right.
He found it absurd that England was dumping convicts while valuable German immigrants were being sought after.
Classic Franklin. Always using humor to make a point. But did he ever really reconcile his views on immigration?
He did, in his typical pragmatic fashion. He realized that trying to force assimilation wouldn't work.
Right.
Instead, he promoted English language education for Germans while acknowledging the benefits of a diverse society.
It sounds like he was grappling with the same issues we face today. How to balance national identity with the richness of cultural diversity.
Yeah.
This really connects with your interest in understanding different perspectives and avoiding information overload.
Right.
He didn't shy away from complexity.
Exactly, and that's what makes him so relevant. He wasn't afraid to change his mind, to adapt his views based on new information and experience. Now, speaking of adapting to a changing world, we need to talk about Franklin's attempt to create a colonial union decades before the Revolution. This is where we really start to see those seeds of independence being planted.
You're talking about the Albany Plan, right? The one with the Grand Council and
Yes.
representatives from each colony.
And what's remarkable
Okay.
is how many of his ideas foreshadow the future United States.
Okay.
He was advocating for a unified colonial government with elected officials,
Yeah.
focused on defense and westward expansion.
It almost feels like he was anticipating the need for a stronger, more unified colonial presence.
He was. But here's the key.
Okay.
Franklin believed that the colonies in Britain should be treated as equals. He envisioned them as one whole, but with mutual respect and shared power. You can see the seeds of independence being sown right there.
It's almost like he was trying to find a way to hold the British Empire together
Right.
while also pushing for a more just and equitable balance of power. It's a fascinating paradox.
It is, and it
Yeah.
makes his eventual shift towards independence even more significant.
Yeah.
But before we get there, we need to talk about Franklin's time in London.
Okay.
He spent years navigating the complexities of British politics,
Yeah.
representing the interests of the Pennsylvania Assembly.
He must have felt like an outsider, trying to make his voice heard in a system that wasn't always receptive to colonial concerns.
He did, and one of the sources you shared mentions a story where a high-ranking British official was completely clueless about basic colonial affairs. It highlights that disconnect between those in power and those affected by their decisions.
Sadly, that's something we still see today, isn't it? Those in power often seem out of touch with the realities of everyday people.
That's true.
But Franklin didn't give up. He became a master of using public opinion to advance his cause.
He understood the power of the pen. He wrote pamphlets and articles trying to educate the British public about colonial grievances. He was a brilliant communicator, able to explain complex issues in a way that resonated with people.
He was also a shrewd observer of human nature. He recognized that those in power weren't always swayed by logic or reason.
Right.
Sometimes it took public pressure to get their attention.
And in one of his writings, he predicts that America will eventually break free from British rule due to the oppression they were facing. This was years before the revolution even started. It shows how clearly he saw the writing on the wall.
So we have Franklin the diplomat, Franklin the master communicator, and now Franklin the prophet, almost. But I have to ask, how did he go from advocating for equality within the British Empire to becoming a champion of American independence? What was the turning point?
That's where the story of the Hutchinson letters comes in.
Okay.
This was a pivotal moment.
Sure.
One that pushed Franklin firmly into the camp of American independence.
Okay, I'm all ears. Fill me in. So this Hutchinson letters incident, it sounds like it was pretty explosive. I'm guessing it wasn't your typical diplomatic exchange?
Not exactly. Franklin anonymously obtained letters from Massachusetts Governor Hutchinson that advocated for greater British control over the colonies. He then sent these letters to colonial leaders.
Whoa. I can see why that would cause a scandal. What was he hoping to achieve by doing this?
Well, he wanted to expose Hutchinson's true intentions and rally support for the colonial cause. The letters revealed that Hutchinson was working against the interests of the colonists and pushing for policies that would further limit their freedoms.
So it was a strategic move to sway public opinion.
Precisely. And it worked.
Yeah.
The scandal that followed solidified Franklin's opposition to British rule and made him a target of the British government. They even publicly humiliated him in a hearing. But this only fueled his resolve and made him even more determined to fight for American independence.
From that point on, he dedicated himself fully to the cause, didn't he? It's almost like this incident was a personal turning point for him.
It was. He became deeply involved in uniting the colonies and securing international support. He even risked his life by traveling to France to seek their aid. And when the Declaration of Independence was signed, he was reportedly overcome with emotion, a powerful testament to how deeply he believed in the cause.
It's incredible to think that this man, who once advocated for reconciliation with Britain, played such a pivotal role in establishing a new nation. He must have been incredibly proud.
He was. But the fight for independence was just the beginning.
Right.
Representing a fledgling nation on the world stage came with a whole new set of challenges.
But like what? I imagine it wasn't easy to unite 13 independent states under a single banner.
It wasn't. He had to deal with individual states undermining his efforts by pursuing their own agendas and seeking separate loans from foreign powers. He also had to contend with difficult colleagues like Arthur Lee, who was known for sowing suspicion and discord.
So it was a constant battle to keep everyone on the same page.
It was. But despite these obstacles, Franklin's diplomatic skills proved invaluable. He successfully negotiated a treaty with France that secured crucial military and financial support, ultimately helping to win the war.
Speaking of diplomacy, the peace negotiations must have been incredibly complex.
Oh, yeah.
How did Franklin navigate that process?
Well, it involved a delicate balancing act between asserting American interests and maintaining good relations with both Britain and France.
Right.
His pragmatic approach often clashed with John Adams's more aggressive stance. But somehow they managed to work together to secure favorable terms for the newly independent United States.
That must have been quite the dynamic duo. What was their relationship like?
Let's just say they had their differences. Franklin once famously described Adams as an honest man, often a wise one, but sometimes absolutely out of his senses.
That's hilarious. I can just imagine the tension in those negotiating rooms. But ultimately, they achieved what they set out to do.
They did. And after 9 long years abroad, Franklin finally returned home to Philadelphia. He was greeted as a hero, a symbol of American ingenuity and resilience.
And how did he spend his later years? Did he finally slow down and enjoy a well-deserved retirement?
Not exactly. Franklin never stopped learning and exploring. He designed smokeless stoves,
Okay.
researched ship design, and even advocated for public health measures related to lead poisoning.
Always the practical innovator.
Always. He also served as president of the Pennsylvania Abolition Society, demonstrating his evolving stance on slavery and his commitment to social justice.
It's amazing to think about all that he accomplished in his lifetime. From a young, curious tinkerer to a world-renowned statesman and champion of human progress. It's an incredibly inspiring story. I bet you could spend a whole nother episode just talking about his inventions and scientific discoveries.
We probably could, but what's truly remarkable is how his life reflects the transformation of America itself. He embodied that spirit of innovation,
Yeah.
pragmatism, and a relentless pursuit of a better future.
It's almost like he was the embodiment of the American dream, long before that phrase even existed. He was a self-made man who never stopped learning, growing, and pushing the boundaries of what was possible.
He was, and I think that's why he continues to resonate with us today. His story reminds us that one person can truly make a difference.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listener to take away from all of this?
I think it's this. Benjamin Franklin was far more than just a founding father. He was a complex, multifaceted individual, driven by curiosity, pragmatism, and a deep belief in human potential. And perhaps most importantly, he never stopped evolving.
And I think that's a great challenge for all of us, isn't it? To approach life with that same sense of wonder, that same willingness to learn and grow.
It is. And I'm curious, after learning all of this,
Yeah.
how do you think Franklin would approach the challenges we face in the world today?
Wow. That's a great question. One that I'll definitely be pondering for a while. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of Benjamin Franklin. It's been an honor to explore his life and legacy with you.
The pleasure was all mine.